good evening, everybody. I'm sorry last week I missed the show. We had literally a technical problem. We had an electrical short in the router, but we got it fixed, and I'm back. I got a great guest tonight. Now, remember what this show is about my old cases that I did very well on, and future and other cases that are now. Like we're going to talk next week. We're going to talk about Alec Baldwin. We're going to talk about things of that nature. But right now we got the soccer mom. Now this is a very interesting case. Anna Croce. I met her a few years earlier. What happened was I was working on another case, the Brazilian bombshell, I call it, Brazilian madam case, and they kept saying that Anna Croce was an informant, and I found out she wasn't. So I was tracking her down, and I contacted a friend who's actually a relative of her, and he advised me in a nice way. He said, please don't go after her, leave her alone. I did. She met me at a function and hugged me and kissed me and said, thank you. And I said, well, who are you? And she said, I'm Anna Croce, because I never met her before. And we became friendly. And then I was going to help her with her, she had like a Match.com website. And we met with a lot of influential people, all right? And we met with a lot of these people, and we were going to get this site up and going. I was going to do the security background checks on some of the people involved, et cetera, et cetera. So and Anna introduced me to some really nice animal rights people and things like that. And one night, I get a phone call about 11:30 at night by her ex-husband, Kevlin. And he says, Vinny, you got to help me. I said, what happened? My wife got arrested. So I called my friend, the lawyer, Pete Gleason. I said, Pete, we got to go to Rikers Island. We have to help this woman. So she calls Pete from jail. Pete says, okay, I'll represent you. We go there. And I think the first day we saw her was in court. She was in the holding pen in the Tombs. And she was very happy to see us. She just felt that she wasn't getting the right representation. The court appointed an 18B lawyer, which is legal aid. And I don't want to say anything bad about them, but everybody knows that they suck. That's all I can say. They suck. So we went in front of the judge, and Pete Gleason said, I am going to substitute for this other lawyer. Well, the judge went berserk. He said, I knew this other lawyer for 30 years. He's a good lawyer, blah, 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 blah. And I who are you? And he started dressing Peter down. And Peter said, look, I'm representing her. Okay. Then we had a bunch of court appearances. Every week was a court appearance. But the kicker was that the judge gave her a $2 million bond for one count of promoting prostitution. Okay. And it made the papers. I mean, it was like unheard of. It was so obvious that they wanted her to give the names of Republicans that she was friendly with. And she wouldn't do that because the DA was a Democrat, Cyrus Vance, and they were trying to press. Now, they took her off the street in the middle of the day, brought her into some office, and didn't let her leave the place. And they berated her for hours. And they said, if you tell us who these people are that use your services, we will let you go home. Okay. She goes, no, she's Scottish. She's stubborn. She's still going to be stubborn tonight too, I'm sure. She said, no, I'm not going to help you. Well, they locked her up. $2 million bail, which was ridiculous. So when we went to court, I convinced the lawyer to put his apartment up for the $2 million bail. He had a $2.5 million condo in Tribeca, beautiful, drop-dead gorgeous place. And the judge went berserk. He said, I've never, ever heard of an attorney putting up a house or an apartment for a client. It never heard of. He told the DA, he says, and the DA was a nice guy. He was like, I don't know. He said, I want you to research this thing and find out if it's okay. And then he said, I'm going to have my clerk research it. So now the family was pressured to get another lawyer. They got this fat Jabba the Hutt lawyer who I didn't like. I met him in Rikers Island when I went to see Anna, and I advised her, do not hire this guy. Number one, he didn't look good. He was limping. He had a cane. He was fat and nasty. He was an arrogant son of a bitch. And he hit the family up for a lot of money, and then he pressured them to give him more money. To make a long story short, she then eventually got rid of him and got another attorney. So the judge went, like, every time we went to court, he said, this is like a circus. He says, how many attorneys are you going to have? So here's what I did. I was working the back. I knew that one of the chief district attorneys working for for Cyrus Vance was a womanizer. I found out through my contacts. He was an assistant attorney general in the Eastern District, which is Brooklyn. And somebody gave me two names of women that worked in his office that he promoted because he was sexually abusing them, harassing them. Let's say harassing, the same thing to me. He then promoted them so they could keep their mouth shut. So I went to see them. Of course, you know it's going to get back to him. So I went to see one, and she said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. And she was working for the Attorney General's office as a borrowed from the New York City Police Department. And I found out that this senior attorney worked for the Attorney General's at one time in New York State. Now, the other female detective became a first grade detective. Now, in the police department, first grade is very prestigious. Number one, it's you say you're first grade, you're like, oh boy, they're good, or they have a good hook, one or the other. And also, when they retire, it adds about $1 million to their pension in the long run. So I tracked the woman down. Now, here's the problem. The woman worked undercover with Vice. She had a beauty salon in Corona, Queens, that was her undercover cover. Well, I tracked that down and I found her home address. She freaked out. I went to the house one night and she wasn't home. She was out with her husband. No, she was divorced at the time. She was out with whatever. And I gave my card to the woman watching the children. Now, an hour later, I get a phone call from this woman. And she says, hello, you came to my house. Why did you come to my house? And I said, well, I'm an investigator. I'm working a case. And this, that, and the other. And she goes, well, I'm not a cop. Don't come to my house no more. Okay. An hour later, I get a call from a nice detective from the Detectives Endowment Association. A nice Irish boy, Sean. He says, Mr. Parco, you came to one of our members' house. I said, wait a minute. She said she wasn't a cop. He said, no, she's a detective. She was just nervous because she'd run the cover and this, that, and the other. And how did you find, I said, well, I'm good at what I do. He goes, obviously you are. He says, can you tell me why you went there? So I said, let me get back to you because I wanted to get permission from Anna or her attorneys. And they said, yeah, tell them. So I called them back and I said, Detective Sean, whatever his last name was. I said, I'm investigating a guy named Dan so-and-so. And I did that on purpose so he would get back to, well, they knew. Now, a few days later, Anna and her attorney gets calls from the DA's office, said, we want to have a meeting with you. And they made her an offer. Okay, now she's coming on in a little while and she's going to talk about that. But what was interesting is that her co-defendant, Jane Baker, who actually was a client of mine, because she during the time that we were all friendly, she hired me to investigate her brother-in-law because she thought he was cheating on her, whatever. He wasn't. He was a good guy. He didn't cheat on anybody. Okay. So what happened was she went to a lawyer. I won't mention his name. He's known as, hi, Mike. How are you? He's known as Cynthia. All right. We'll talk about your son's next. We'll do that another time. Okay. We're going to talk about her son's case is horrendous. So Jenny Mae Baker, the beautiful woman, was her partner, so to speak. When I heard that she went to rob a guy, I said she's going to turn, and she did. She turned, but what happened was she had nothing more to say about the case than it was already done. And she took a plea. Nothing happened to her. Okay. And she was doing some stuff on the side that they let it go just to get Anna. They really wanted Anna in the worst way. So let me go back to what I did. So I put this all together. I gave it to her lawyer. Said, what we're going to do. I let them know that we were investigating these people. And I used to play football when I was in high school. And the best defense is an offense. That's what I say. So they knew that we were going after them. So in the meantime, I get a subpoena from the district attorney's office. And one of the writers from the Post said, oh, Vinny Parco is going to spill the beans. Well, there's no beans to spill. So I get there. I ask a bunch of lawyers to show up. No, we want $5,000. We want money. I said, hey, David, how are you? So what I did was I contacted a dear friend of mine, another attorney. He said, yeah, I'll go there with you. No big deal. I walk in there, and all I had was Jenny Baker's case that I did for her and a couple business cards. That's all I had. So I walk in, and the chief detective comes down. He treated me like he knew me for 20 years. Hey, Vinny, how are you? Hey, how you doing? He goes, what do you got? He goes, go home. I said, what? No, you don't have to come upstairs. You don't have to go to the grand jury. It's take us to. I can't say it. I must have said it 1,000 times. Deuces take them means that it needs paperwork. So we walk out. All right. So I get the word that the DA's office is going after me for whatever reason. I don't know. So now we put all this together. Now in the meantime, I'm doing a couple TV shows. I'm defending her, obviously, and I'm on all these different shows talking about her case and how she got railroaded and this, that, and the other. And lo and behold, Dr. Phil calls her up and says, I want you on the show. She's going to talk about that herself. I don't want to get into that. But her lawyer, this fat Jabba the Hutt lawyer, took 30% of what the money she got from Dr. Phil, when he should have let her keep the money so she could pay the lawyers. Again, I'm not going to talk about that. Let her talk about that. And I couldn't believe how bad this lawyer was. But what happened was I suggested that we go to trial. But I have no say in the matter. I'm just a disinterested party. But she wanted to go to trial, but the law, no, you got to deal. Her family said, no, take the deal. The deal was plead guilty, no jail time, and parole, probation. And, sometimes the discretion's a better part of valor. But then the judge said, on record, if you don't take a plea, even before the offer, he said, if you go to trial, I am going to give you a sentence of the maximum 7 years, which is ridiculous for one count of promoting prostitution, which is equivalent to a guy going to a prostitute on the corner and say, hey, here's $50. I want it. It's the same thing. I mean, they made it a little bit more exotic, but let's face it. She did not, the girls that were involved in this did not have sex with the undercover detective. What they did a show. The show is not prostitution. I mean, you can watch a pornographic show, and half the things on TikTok are pornographic anyway. So they wanted her so bad. Okay, so we're gonna have her come on, and she's got a lot to say, and of course she's gonna correct some of the things that I might have said. Maybe I but now we have a couple sponsors. I want to get them out of the way. Okay, Anthony, let's talk about raviolis. Bulgari's ravioli. I come from Arthur Avenue. This is the best ravioli and egg noodles that you ever want to get. They are well known all over. Everybody, all the restaurants use them. Their stuff is fresh, or frozen. It's unbelievable. Plus, they have all kinds of Italian imported goods and things. They make everything right on the premises, and unbelievable. And Arthur Avenue has some of the best restaurants in New York, and they use their egg noodles and their raviolis for their customers because they're the best. Okay, and one more sponsor, and then we're finished with the sponsors. Medicare and Medicaid Resource Center. This is Mark Turner Insurance. The guy is a genius. He knows every angle for Medicare, Medicaid. He knows all the how to deal with the governmental agencies that are horrible. He's very good. He's in Staten Island, but he works all over the country. And his number is on the screen: 718-873-1292 or 646-377-5840. Mark Turner. Okay, Anna, you're on, baby.
Hi, Vinny. Nice to see you.
So, where do you want to start? You want to start with
Excuse me?
When you got stopped by the police, when they pulled you in and they interviewed you, how many hours were you in their office before they let you go?
Let's start with I was not picked up. I was abducted off the street.
Okay, all right.
And thrown in the back of a car. They didn't identify themselves, and they just threw me in the back of a car and took me to a warehouse at 77 Worcester Street, a known confidential informant center for the district attorney's office. They kept trying to throw out names to me, and their main goal was they wanted to flip me to be a confidential informant for the state of New York against some high-profile mostly Republicans, although there was 2 Democrats in there too. They basically grilled me from 10 in the morning until about 7 at night, and they would not allow me a lawyer. They would not allow me to make a phone call. They told me I was not under arrest, but I was being detained and I could not leave. The district attorneys came in and basically said if I didn't take their offer, I could go through one door to Rikers Island that night, or I could go through another door, and that would go back to my normal life, everyday life, with immunity. And that was the beginning. And I basically told them I'd rather bite my own tongue off than cooperate and rat out my friends. So off to Rikers I went on a $2 million bail.
Ridiculous.
They threw me an attorney. They threw me in the Tombs overnight. They threw me in Center Street overnight. And I was put before Judge Merchan, who's currently on the Trump case. He's a bought and paid for judge by Chuck Schumer. Just so you guys know, he nominated him for the federal bench. And because my attorneys went to the Court of Appeals and overturned the bail and found him to be an egregious abuse of discretion, he lost his federal bench nomination. So he had a hard-on for me, that judge, because you only get nominated once in your lifetime. So, there's so many layers of the onion. My first attorney was Saracuso, and I'd never met him before, never saw him before. A minute and a half to 2 minutes before the judge decided to start speaking to me, he sits down with me and he says, "You've got to cooperate with them."
Yeah,
I said,
but he's court-appointed. What do you expect?
I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You have to cooperate with them." So the district attorney says that I was involved with minors, which is not true. I'm very against anything to do with anybody under 21. He said I had multiple passports. This is hysterical. I had a British passport and a Scottish passport. Well, anybody with any education understands that the UK passport covers all 4 countries: England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. they claimed I had properties in Montreal and I was a flight risk. And I had all these billionaires with jets just sitting on the tarmac waiting to fly me off out into the sunset away from the case. So they set me a bail at 1 million cash or 2 million bond. And then off to Rikers I went. And Rikers was an interesting place. Really didn't faze me. I mean, they're just people. A lot of broken people. But they put me in general pop and told everybody I was a pedophile. They were trying to get me to squeal. But I stood my ground. I'm Scottish. I lived on the streets of Scotland when I was 15. So, ate from dumpsters, slept on park benches. So seriously, Rikers was really a step up from that. They just were not expecting my tenacity. So Vinny came onto the case and discovered that a certain gentleman by the name of Daniel Alonso, who used to work at the federal prosecutor's office, was sexually harassing female detectives. And as Vinny had told you, he went to their place of employment and also their home. Of course, at that point, the next game day, a plea deal came in. Suddenly, they wanted rid of me. There must have been 4 plea deals, which is unheard of in any case. And each time, they knocked off a few names off the list. But the bottom 3 people, I would never have ratted on. I would have gone to jail for them. They were friends. So I absolutely had nothing to say and told them to go, you can imagine what I said to them, Vinny. You know me.
Yeah, well, you're a stand-up person. But your friends didn't stand up. None of them, they didn't come to your aid. They tried
don't worry.
They
Payback's a bitch.
You know?
I'm now in the process of marketing my book proposal for the true story. And it's going to be very interesting.
Well, you deserve whatever you can get. You deserve. You got a book deal. You did a Lifetime show. Am I correct?
I did a Lifetime movie. I did 2 episodes of Dr. Phil. And
3 episodes of Special Victims Unit Law and Order.
Oh, yeah.
They used your case.
Yeah, Richard Wolff came to Rikers, and I didn't know who he was. I thought it was a reporter, so I declined to meet with him.
Well, you're the only Special Victims Unit. I've only done 2 a 2-part series. Yours is the only 3-part series they ever did.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
your
interesting
case
to
is
know.
very interesting.
I guess sex sells.
Well, sex sells.
Or the illusion of sex sells.
Do you have a copy of your book nearby with you?
No, unfortunately, I don't. I've got one book that's just recently out. It's a collection of funniest stories. It's called The Secret Desires of the 1% by Anna Croce. It can be found on Amazon. It can be found on Barnes & Noble. And it's a collection of the funniest stories of billionaires. All true stories. There's 40-something stories. And each one is a page turner, I've been told. And it's doing very well. We may be taking it to a bigger publishing house to take it to the next level because it's doing so well.
Good. Yeah, these publishing houses, sometimes they don't want to take a chance, but if they see you doing good,
yeah,
then they want to jump in on it.
Yeah.
You got to get a big advance from them because what happens at the other end, you get a very small percentage on the royalties on book. You got to get your money up front.
Yeah.
Where you make your money. Now, you were on Dr. Phil. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Well, Dr. Phil was the first time ever he actually came to somebody's house. And he actually came to my house in Monroe, New York, with his whole film crew. And my attorney at the time, I had gotten rid of Gary Greenwald because he was he was trying to sell me out.
Yeah.
He was basically trying to sell me out for a plea deal to make good friends with the DA's office and have an in. He was just a grubby, sleazy, he had one case in his life, the mobster Chin, or Jin, or whatever you call him.
Vinny the Chin.
Vinny the Chin. And that was his claim to fame. Other than that, he was just a pig.
Well, I met a few people that hired him. When they heard that you hired him, they said, "Oh, he's terrible."
Yeah.
And what did I tell you when I was in Rikers with you? I told you, don't hire this guy. But your family hired him, and you had no choice.
Yeah, I had no say in it because in Rikers, they limited me to the law library. I wasn't able to do my own research to find lawyers, or they limited me to 20 minutes a week instead of the 20 minutes a day. And I couldn't present any case. They did everything. They put me in isolation. They tried to get me to wear a diaper and some kind of funky gown. And I absolutely said to them, over my dead, lifeless body, you can put me in the hole. And so then they went to court, and I was put in with the killers of children. Gigi Jordan, for example. I was put in with a Yankee stalker, that nut job, Louise Neathway, very mentally unstable. They put me in with the worst of the worst.
You actually recommended. We actually did work for them afterwards. They hired us because they saw what we were doing for you.
Yeah.
They hired us.
Yeah.
But the other one, the Neathway hired us.
The next lawyer that I hired was Norman Pattis, which was probably a really big mistake at my end because he was a Connecticut lawyer, and I don't think he was versed in New York protocol. And he made many mistakes in my case that cost me. So right now, what ended up happening was I was bullied and gangstered to basically take the final plea deal where I didn't have to give up any names. They wanted rid of me because a certain individual and his friend gave Cy Vance an enormous donation in April of 2012. And suddenly, the day after the donation hit his account, the plea deal came in. And it happened to be one of the names on the list. Wouldn't you see that's pay to play if there ever was a case?
Yeah. Well, they use you in a terrible way, and they didn't see. Here's the problem: they didn't expect you to fight. They didn't expect you to get different lawyers because they gave you a court-appointed attorney who was a nice guy. But I got to tell you something. When I went to see you and I saw him in court, the guy actually is a lawyer. He's wearing a tattered suit. If you look, the cuffs were frayed. He didn't even dress right. He was an 18B. He's a public defender. Doesn't make any money. What they do is they just try to churn out cases.
They were trying to railroad me from the very beginning. It was always about, this was to do with politics. My case was nothing more. I was collateral damage. It was nothing more than politics based on the 10 people on the list. Who every one of you know who they are. From Fortune 500 to Forbes magazine to the most powerful people in New York.
I met them. I'm surprised. When they subpoenaed me for the grand jury, they only asked for papers. Deuces, take them. But I was worried that they were going to put me on the stand and ask me about the people I met from you. Now,
you didn't meet the 10 names, which was good. You met other people. Like when we went to the high net worth banking firm for the funding.
Subpoena had about 20 names listed.
Well, they actually had been after me. This was a 7-year investigation to get me on one count of promotion because of the connections I had with the billionaire club.
Yeah.
It was nothing more than a political takedown.
And
I do believe Governor Cuomo is heavily involved in my case, which things have been brought to light that shows that. And Cy Vance received, from one of the men on the list, an enormous donation, the biggest one he got, in fact.
Now, do you think that was given to him indirectly for you? Is that what you?
In April of 2012, two huge donations were made. One from one of the people on the list, and one was his best friend. All within 2 to 3 days apart, the two donations. Then the next day, they met with my attorneys with a plea deal, which I told them to go F themselves. Still wasn't going to bite on the deal. They did not want to go to trial after that because the case had been bought and paid for by one of the most powerful people in New York, who has funded public buildings, the most exclusive universities in the world. And they got him. They got his support. Cuomo did.
Well, Cuomo has his own problems with the sexual harassment and whatever. He's lucky. Well, he's the governor, and I don't want to get political, but he in New York State, if you're a Democrat, you get away with a lot of stuff. Put it that way.
He illegally wiretapped me too, through a company that's owned. It's a private company that seems to get all the contracts from Cuomo when he was in office. They illegally wiretapped me. Actually, you can Google them and find out that they did this in Brazil. They illegally wiretapped a diplomat, and they got caught and they got arrested, and then they sold their company in New York because it was tainted. I found out a lot after the case. So now where I'm standing is, I want the minutes from my case that were public minutes. Every media station in the planet was in my courtroom, and they sealed the records. After everybody heard it, suddenly it's all sealed.
Because they don't want it to come out.
Well, what it was the judge said, there will be no further evidence given in this case. That's grounds for a 440 motion. He denied me evidence. He can't do that. The other one was, the next time you see your son, he'll be going into college. That was the next one. So we're trying to get these minutes. And right now, I'm in the Federal Court of Appeals. And on January 3rd, my attorney, Lawrence LeBeau, had an oral briefing with the appellate court, and we're waiting on the outcome of that. But I was handed in the in the federal court, Judge Crotty. So let's talk about Judge Crotty, another little criminal man. He happens to be married to Jane Crotty, who's George Art's business partner, who was Cy Vance's, at one point, campaign manager. Do you see where this goes, everybody?
It's a very incestuous relationship between these people.
Yes. So I'm not going to stop. I'm going to go to the highest court in the land.
Now do you have this? Now you're in federal court on your appeal.
I'm also in state court. I'm in both courts. I'm suing them both ways. If you Google it, Anna Croce sues judge, you'll see that I have them in both courts.
You're suing the judge in state court.
And federal.
And then federal too.
Yes. For civil rights violations in the federal.
Now, if you win the appeal, then your case gets expunged.
No, I go back to Judge Merchan, and of course, based on the corruption that he's been involved in, we would ask to move jurisdictions, and we would ask for a 440 motion where I can go back to trial.
Right. Now,
they didn't
want to go to trial with you in the beginning. So
exactly, but now I know all the truth and all the players and all the payoffs. They're certainly going to want to go to trial with me, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, they don't.
Well, no. Let's just say fair game. If they want to go to trial, bring it on, boys.
Now, Larry LeBeau is doing your appeal.
Lawrence LeBeau, yes.
In the federal or state?
Both. He's fabulous. This is a man who knows his stuff.
Okay.
I wish I had him as my lawyer to begin with.
He's working on my appeal.
He's amazing.
He's taking so long He keeps putting it off.
He doesn't put it off. The judicial system takes 4 months to 6 months to read your appeal. And then there's another appeal, and that's another 4 to 6 months. He's doing it in a timely fashion. It's just sad that the judicial system, and especially because of the corona, they're backed up.
Well, all right. We're not going to go into that. I have a different opinion about that, but that's me. And we're not talking about me, Ted. We're talking about you. What else? Now, you also said something about a possible TV reality show about you.
I've been offered by 4 different documentaries to do a true story documentary, which I'm still pondering because, some things are better left unsaid. So the Lifetime movie wasn't exactly accurate. There was a few accurate things in it, but it didn't really describe my life. So my story has never been told, and that's why I'm going to do it in my own book, the Anna Christina story, when I actually publish that one. That one's in the process now.
That'd be very interesting. By the way, any people that are watching this podcast, you're welcome to type in a comment or a question for Anna or myself. We'll be more than glad to explain or talk about it. And we usually, Anna, we usually get people that will make comments during it, and I like that. Most of the comments are good. So I like to be interactive. I like the people not only to listen to me. I want to listen to them. I want them to give me their ideas. And
but I will say one thing: Cy Vance decided to retire when I came out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
And Judge Marchand is extraordinarily nice to my attorney.
Well, I only know the judge through your case when I went to court, and it's interesting that we had so many appearances on your case. It was unbelievable.
This is for one reason. It was to shake down these billionaires. Every day it was in the paper. This went on for like 7 or 8 months. I was on the front page of every paper across the world. I mean, this wasn't just a New York story.
Anthony, I have some clips from that I sent you about Anna and myself. You want to show the people those clips? I got them from Google, obviously Google. There's one where you on the front cover of the Post with Sly Francis, who I became friendly with afterwards. And then on the Jazz Cruise, I'm sitting at the front row at the Jazz Cruise, and the photographer became very friendly with me. He says, "Vinny, you don't know this guy?" Because I never met him before. He's a big guy.
Yeah, he's an awesome guy. He's a friend of mine.
Yeah. What a great guy.
And he was from the district attorney's office, one of the detectives. He was a friend of mine. He's a really great guy.
Yeah, but here's the angle. That's me and her going into court. And then there's another one. There's one with you and Sly. I'm gonna see if he brings that up. Sly calls me. This is how I met him. The news after that article came out, which Anthony's gonna find. And after they came out with that article, he lives in Jersey. They swarmed his house. He couldn't get. So he calls me up. Hey Eddie, how are you? He calls me up. He says, Vinny, you never met him. He says, Vinny, I know you're working with Anna. He says, what do I do? What do I do? I said, listen, very simple. Do not say anything to them. You have nothing to say. Which he did. He had nothing to say.
They actually took him in for with one of the attorneys for the police department and said he had nothing to say, and he just walked away.
Well, here's the problem.
Because he didn't do anything wrong.
During our investigation, we found out that he was a detective in the DA squad.
And that made Cy Vance and everybody shaking their shoes when they found that out.
Right. And though he didn't say anything, there was like a little undertow of like, what is Sly Francis?
Why is a DA detective
Yeah.
That's when I'm being prosecuted by the DA. Why is he on the front page of the paper with Anna Christina?
And he was at the time he was only working as your bodyguard for Bo Dietl. He wasn't he didn't when he worked for you as a bodyguard, he did not
Not
work.
really. Let me clarify what he did.
Yeah.
We would have a girls' night out every couple of months with a group of friends. And the girls would party, they would drink, whatever they would do. And for safety reasons, when you go out with a group of friends, like really pretty girls, for example, you know, there's a lot of unsorty types out there. Like one girl got slip rufinol. So after that, I decided if I'm going on a girls' night out, to hire somebody to keep an eye on us and make sure we all got in a cab and all got home. And that was what Sly did. He did nothing more. He wasn't a bodyguard. All as he did was he was basically like a babysitter for us degenerates.
He was security.
Security, yes.
As a New York City police, he's allowed to do it on the side.
Yeah, he did nothing wrong. He had no affiliation.
What happened was one of the attorneys called me up and said, you know, this guy was working for the DA's office, and the DA's office is prosecuting her. You know, maybe there's some connection there, even though there wasn't. It was the impression of impropriety. But
I went to a district attorney's Christmas party.
Yeah. I mean,
that's why I want to go back to trial. I want to go to trial.
I've been involved in law enforcement for many years. Okay. I worked for the state of New York as an investigator, and then I went private. Okay. And the incestuous relationship between the district attorneys and the defense attorneys is unbelievable. Normally, when people hire an attorney, they say, "Oh, he was a former assistant DA." So they right away they figure, well, he's got a connection. He's got to have some. Now, what happens is they do give him a little extra courtesy. I have to admit that, but not all the time. So sometimes people hire lawyers because they worked in the DA's office and because they were former prosecutors, and they figure, well, he's got connections. He knows people, and sometimes it's true, but many times it's not. So some people get misled by that. I've seen that so many of my clients. Oh, I got a guy. He was a former DA. Well, you know what? It didn't help. Sometimes the case is so strong, it doesn't matter who your attorney is. In your case, I believe.
Really didn't, Vinny, they really didn't have a case. They had a peep show. And 7 years investigation, they would not turn over Judge Merchan in front of an entire courtroom. Said, I'm limiting it to one count, and there'll be no further evidence turned over to the defense. He basically shut my case down, and he can't do that under case law.
No.
And that's the minutes we're trying to get, which was publicly said in front of all the media.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. The incident that they charged you with two girls met an undercover police officer. They did not have sex with him.
Oh, absolutely not.
They did a show. They did a show for him.
Yeah, just
that
like
alone
a porn
is not
show.
promoting prostitution.
It was a porn show.
Yeah, porn show, which you can get on TikTok, you can get on Pornhub or whatever. You can get all these things. So I felt, and of course I have a great affection for you. I felt that if we went into trial, you would have won. I really felt that because they didn't have a case.
They wore me down, and the media wore me down. I was hunted day and night. They were in my garbage or in my mailbox. They were in my son's schools. My children had to be pulled out of school. I went to Home Depot to buy tomatoes, and I turned around and there's a whole stream of paparazzi chasing me through Home Depot. It was very taxing on my nerves. And then 4 months in Rikers where you can't defend yourself. You're literally shut down. You can't get into the law library, even though that's against your civil rights also. They did
Is that part of your lawsuit, your civil rights lawsuit?
No, the civil rights is they're denying me the minutes that were public.
Okay. Yeah. But I remember we came out of court Pete Gleason and I came out of court. Now, I've been in front of a camera. I've been on TV hundreds of times. It doesn't faze me. But I got scared. I was like, all of a sudden, it was like all these journalists and reporters clicking away with taking the cameras and taking pictures. I was like, oh my God. But Pete did something very good for you. He said, this woman did not have anything to do with child trafficking, which was which they kind of intimated that you were involved with that, which was not true.
They tried to do that to squeeze me at Rikers. They do that commonly.
When Pete said that, then they put you out of general population. They put you in a private. They put you in a okay, because they knew on record that you did not do anything like that. But they did that on purpose so that you would be victimized. You would be victimized in jail.
Well, here's something else.
There's a rule in jail. Sexual predators get shit kicked out or get killed.
Yeah. But I will tell you another thing. This is a very big factor. You know, during the whole case, you know, money exchanged hands behind closed doors in the form of donations, and it's public record. Go to the Board of Electors and look and see who donated during my case, the big amounts of money. That's the people they were after.
Well, they got their pound of flesh from them.
Oh, and here's another thing. They tried 7 different attempts to get me on one count of promotion. 7 different sting attempts. 7.
Yeah.
For one count of promotion. Gee, I must have been really important to them.
Well, they didn't, you know, the problem is they did not expect you to be so adamant in not giving up a name. They didn't want that.
Obviously, they didn't watch Braveheart.
They didn't know you. They did not know you.
No, they obviously didn't watch the movie Braveheart.
One of my favorite movies, by the way. By the way, I have a dear friend of mine that's a private investigator. He was in Scotland Yard. He was in the Army. He was in Special Forces. And one day after I watched Braveheart, I called him up. I said, you know, you're from English, you're British. I said, those Scottish were crazy tough. He goes, they still are.
They could have disemboweled me and I still wouldn't have given up a name. And then when they figured that out about me, they got a little concerned. When you started your investigation into them, they got scared.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I've been known to.
But I do believe they targeted you afterwards.
You know, I worked on a RICO case in Staten Island. The very first RICO case they ever did. They didn't. First of all, Staten Island. Everybody in Staten Island is dumb as shit. Okay, so let's get that straight. Well, the DA is no different, and they went after my client, and I knew that they were going to arrest me. I knew it because I was told. See, Staten Island, everybody talks, everybody knows each other. And I was told the police are pissed at you because you're going out interviewing all the witnesses. And I got them to talk. And by talking, eventually we got all the charges dismissed. Okay, 238 cases, charges against a mechanic. They charged him for stupid. I mean, if someone spit on the car, oh, it's a misdemeanor. You know, they did that. And these guys were like you. They would not give up. They put. I got to tell you, over $1 million in lawyers and the investigators and stuff like that. And
let me tell you another story, Vinny, that really disgust the American people. Over my decade in business, when I learned about people who were pedophiles, I would drop anonymous notes at Manhattan North and other precincts. I don't care who listens. And guess what? I accumulated 2,600 files that we tried to give to Cy Vance. And do you know what he said about the pedophile rings? He had no interest in them. He wanted me. He wanted the billionaires. He wanted the powerful people for Cuomo.
Well, look
Cuomo was behind this.
what happened to Cuomo?
Payback's a bitch.
Ah, yes, karma's the bitch.
Yeah,
And
but
that
I'm not
Marchand never got he never got the federal judgeship, right?
Oh, excuse me. Oh, the Judge Marchand, he'll spend the rest of his life in criminal court because you can only be nominated once.
No, what happened? They withdrew the nomination?
They withdrew the nomination based on my case for the egregious abuse of discretion.
Nice. Well, you got some measure of revenge by you being.
No, the true revenge will be going back to court for a 440 motion and being offered the chance to go to trial and bring in all the big boys who were involved.
Now, are they fighting? Now, I know they have to. The other side has to make a presentation against your case. Have they been very strong about it, or they've been kind of like?
Well, Cy Vance, they delayed till Cy Vance was out of office. They left it on this new guy. They're not prosecuting prostitution cases, drug cases, murder cases, even in some cases.
You could stab somebody and they let you out the same.
Probably what I could see them doing, they're going to probably grant the 440 based on the evidence. I have the right to that once I get the minutes. And they're probably going to see, in the interest of justice, we're not going to re-prosecute because she's already been prosecuted in double jeopardy.
Now, let me tell my viewers something about 440 motion. When someone takes a plea, usually when they take a plea, they say, when they bring it up, they say, you cannot appeal. You took a plea, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And you probably had to sign that. Am I correct?
Yes, but under duress and
on a 440 motion, what you're telling the court is that there was some impropriety. You weren't advised properly, et cetera, et cetera.
We had 3 improprieties.
Okay. Now, let me tell you something. 99% of 440 motions get thrown out. The fact that they accepted yours and that you're in federal court, that's big. That's very big. They do not. I know I've met so many people that have 440. They're playing with themselves. They're masturbating with the paperwork. That's about it. So the fact that they let you bring a 440 motion and you're in federal court.
Of appeals. I'm in the Federal Court of Appeals.
That is big. Very big.
Second Circuit.
So now, so you have an oral argument Wednesday.
No, the oral argument was on January 3rd, and it takes 4 to 6 weeks for the Federal Court of Appeals to render the decision.
They take about 4 years.
I'm not that hopeful. I think it's going to go to the Supreme Court of Appeals. I think it's going to go to the 5 judges.
No, if you went to the Court of Appeals, the next thing is Supreme Court.
Yes, the Supreme Court of Appeals, and they have 5 judges.
It's not Supreme Court of Appeals, it's Supreme Court, period.
And it's 5 judges.
Yeah.
And because there's so much corruption, Judge Crotty is the perfect example. I told the FBI, who I've done, a little bit of consulting for, told the FBI that I'm going to get drawn Judge Crotty before it even happened. And as soon as it happened, they called me in. The FBI have been to my house several times to get information.
Well, keep in mind, the FBI at the top level is very corrupt. The FBI agents themselves, most of them are doing
good people.
They're good
and I'll
people.
give you another little story. You remember the Parco case? Parco and Cuomo, his best friend who was getting paid off.
Parco.
Yes. Guess what? That corporation happened to be a company that was bought over by a company that was one of the names on the list.
Very good.
The FBI showed up at my door to get my cooperation in that matter. And I said to them, why should I cooperate with you? You haven't kept your agreements in the past.
Interesting. The corruption, you got to remember.
It was 2 weeks before the Parco case started. The FBI came in a snowstorm in their little shiny shoes, slipping up my driveway. You've seen the driveway.
Oh yeah, good. I see your driveway. Good thing I had shoes on that I could. It was hard to walk. Yeah, okay. Now
And
we got
I
we got
can
3 minutes.
prove the FBI have consulted with me, and I can prove all of that.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
I know the answer, but I want to ask it. If you had to do it over again, what would you do?
I would go to trial, and you know, that's really a catch-22, because I didn't have access to the internet and didn't have access to information. I really was blind in jail. You're kept blind. You can't defend yourself.
No.
So I felt getting out, seeing my children, taking the plea deal. But then as time went on and I found out all the corruption that was in my case, I got angry. I got angrier and angrier and decided to do something about it and to call them out on it. And you'll never believe who the judge that you have to go back to for the first round, Judge Marchand.
Oh no.
Oh, that was the
Yeah,
first judge that denied me.
I like when you went to the state court of appeals in I think it's District 1, the one in Manhattan. You went in there to reduce your $2 million bail to 200,000.
Oh, they
That
chewed them apart.
kicked Marchand in the ass because the lawyer that Pete Gleason brought, the guy
Norman Paris.
He was the clerk for the Court of Appeals judge. When they saw him in there, they realized that there was something up, and then they reduced it down to 200,000. That was a kick in the ass to Judge Marchand and to the.
Well, they turned around and they chewed the district attorney out, saying it's good enough for Strauss-Kahn. It was good enough for Martha Stewart. Why can't she have an ankle bracelet? And it really boiled down to they never did a forensic financial on me to find out what my bail would have been qualified at. Because when you get taken in intake, they're supposed to do a financial intake, and that determines your bail.
Yeah.
Unless you've committed a murder.
Well, again, you know, what they said was that you had access to billionaires with private jets, and they
that was not my income. It's still, they had to do a forensic income. They did not do it.
You got to remember, bail is a very subjective type of thing. It's up to the judge.
That's okay. Judge Marchand lost his federal bench nomination, and he'll never get it again for the rest of his life. Good. He's going to sit in criminal court.
We're ready to. All right, you got any last statements you want to say? We got another minute left.
No, just thank you very much for having me, and I hope my story inspires others to stick their heels in and fight the system.
Joe Croce says, if the case went to trial, any good attorney would have the case thrown out. Yes, and I was there, and I said, I told you, and I told your attorneys, let's go. But I didn't have the power to you know.
Oh, one other thing. Janie Mae Baker, my co-defendant, she started running drugs and stayed in business, and they had confidential informants who came forward to the district attorney's office.
They didn't do anything.
And they didn't do anything. They wired up. They did a sting with the drug dealer, who I don't even know, but it was Janie Mae Baker's drug dealer, and she was pimping girls out to S&M clients, and one of the girls ended up in hospital.
I believe that. Oh, by the way,
the district attorney made it all go away.
She hired an attorney when she got arrested. She hired an attorney named Robert Gottlieb, and I had other.
And he was on Cy Vance's revamping team.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you what I know about him. I had another client of mine that hired him and fired him. All he wanted to do is turn. All he does, he wants all his clients to turn rat. He tried to get my friend Robbie, the same thing. The girl that was hired me to look for you. The what's her name?
Andrea
Schwartz. She went to him, and her boyfriend was hired me. He said, no. They fired him. All he does is get people to rat, and he's a very successful attorney because of that.
Yeah.
He's a rat attorney.
And I'll tell you what happened, and then I'll let you go because time is up. At my sentencing, when I was asked if I was going to say if I'm guilty or not, I whispered to my attorney, and there was this 5-minute silence while I was thinking about it, if I was going to take this plea deal or not, because this little stubborn part of me said, I won't say it on the air.
You could
You
say.
know,
You
fuck
could say.
them. Okay, and I said to my lawyer, I want you to go up there and tell them Jamie Baker is actively in business and she's dealing drugs.
Yeah.
Something
All right.
I never got involved in. And you know what the judge did? He stared forward at the clock on the wall, and he would not make eye contact, and he would not speak to my attorney or say anything.
No. You know, too much corruption. Listen, I want to thank you again. I want to thank everybody for listening in. I like all the people that have made comments. Keep the comments coming. We will have more things in the future.
You'll see me again in the near future, hopefully, at my 440 hearing.
All right. I want to be there. I want to be there.
Potentially trial. I might need you again. All righty. Bye.
Okay.